Hi, I'm Howard. I would like to introduce my project car. This is a 1993 Mazda FD RX-7, which I've owned since I was 25 years old. And I'm nearly 45 now, so it's been almost 20 years since I've had it. Now, just a really quick background. My friends and I were doing a lot of racing back then, and like how most stories go, I modified the car more and more until at one point I decided to go full race car. Big mistake. And commissioned a shop to custom design and fabricate a roll cage for me. And then life happened, and the parts never went back in, and the car sat in this state for nearly 15 years. And fast forward to now, my kids are older, my dogs are older, and I finally have some time to work on it. Now, in just one last bit of information, I have owned and driven a lot of cars in the past, on and off the track, and at this age, I think I can finally acknowledge that the Mazda Miata is my favorite car of all time. It's the only car that I feel an immediate connection with the moment I jump in one. It's the feeling that the car becomes an extension of my body and I have no fear of pushing it to or past its limits. And I also just enjoy driving it and working on it. I just love the feeling and I love its simplicity. In fact, I would have been perfectly happy with this NC Miata that I picked up a few years ago if my FD RX-7 didn't exist. You see, I got the shop to put in a very special cage for me, and for 15 years I've been looking at it and just wondering and imagining what it drives like. I'll showcase the cage a little later, but for now, the main goal of this project is to turn a race car into a 100% California street legal car. At this stage in my life, I want to be able to drive it to work, pick up my kids, and maybe do grocery. I don't think I ever will go racing again because I've kind of gotten that out of my system entirely. And I'll be achieving this goal by installing everything from this NC Miata into this RX-7. And I mean everything. The engine, the transmission, engine harness, body harness, gauge cluster, HVAC, power steering, AC, everything. This will be essentially an NC Miata through and through, inside an RX-7 body. Okay, let's get to business. So the first thing I had to do was to rebuild the firewall. And the reason why I had to do that was because I ran a much bigger engine before, and although the roll cage shop did a fantastic job with the roll cage, not so much for the firewall. They just kind of ran this flat piece of panel all across the passenger side, and I really didn't like it. So I wanted to get rid of that. I wanted to make some space for the passenger's feet as well. So I rebuilt the whole thing. I pushed that section back out to where it's supposed to be, and the shop also cut out the entire area where you mount the windshield wiper and motor. I'm not sure why they did that. Last time I checked, race cars have windshield motors and wipers, so quite a headache to get that piece back in. I'm gonna have to definitely fab something and cover all that area up. Now, the reason why this area looks like this is because I originally wanted to run racing pedals from Tilton, but then after a lot more consideration for the street, I decided to use the original brake booster setup. So I'm now using the factory Miata NC Miata pedals, that's where the gas pedal goes, the brake pedals and booster, and the clutch pedal and cylinder. Now, as you can imagine, stock pedals all have funky shapes. They're all mounted on funky angles, so that's why it has to look like that. And also, it was a lot of work to work around the existing chassis and roll cage. So I did what I could, but yeah, that's it actually looks really great with everything all mounted up, which I'll show you shortly. Now, the cage, or I'm sorry, the firewall is nearly done. I mean, it's all there, all the pieces are there. I've just been spending a lot of time grinding down all the corners. The exterior corners are really easy to do. You just kind of take a grinder and just make a nice smooth round finish to it. But the interior corners, like these ones, they take forever. You gotta go in there with a little bit and just create a radius. And so I think I'm almost there. I don't think I'm gonna go all the way up there, just because I think that area will be covered up by the windshield wiper piece eventually. But I'm definitely going to spend a bit more time, maybe a few more weeks, just to go around and grind down all the welds so it looks nice and professional. So this is the complete NC Miata drivetrain. The entire drivetrain is ready to be dropped into the RX-7. I've done all the work already. I'll just quickly go over what's been done. Hi, Khaleesi. Okay, so I decided to use and modify from the stock FD RX-7 subframe. Hi, Remington. Good boy. And the reason is because, as you can see, hi, Khaleesi. As you can see, the reason is because the lower control arms, suspension arms, they mount into these sockets. And additionally, they have camber features here. So I decided to keep it just to save time. I just kind of fabbed some thick steel plates. Then I used these really nice engine mounts from Flying Miata. They're polyurethane. And I highly recommend them. They look great, and they're just really good products. And what's also important to me is that I need to ensure that the stock FD steering rack is in its original location, and that's to retain the factory FD RX-7's steering and suspension geometry. That's really important to me. Okay, so you guys are in the way, please. The transmission mount is pretty interesting. The factory NC Miata and FD RX-7 actually don't have transmission mounts. They have this piece instead. It's called a power plant frame, or PPF, and this acts as a bridge that suspends the transmission and the rear differential together. They tie them together for better throttle response. So consequently, the transmission doesn't have a good mounting location except for these 4 giant bolts for the PPF. So I decided to, and also for purpose of better alignment, ease of alignment as well, I decided to use these factory mounts and the PPF and chop it in half. And I fabbed this adapter at the end of it to create an independent transmission mount. Now, what I've done here is essentially create a giant lever that goes from the front engine mounts all the way to back here at this mounting point. And this giant lever means that the weight that this transmission mount now carries is very little, roughly 30 pounds only. For the transmission mount, I made this piece that bolts to the stock FDRX7 chassis. I got this bushing from eBay for $25. This is a generic mount for trucks, for cabin and frame. And yeah, so this just goes right here like this. And I also made a spacer that I turn on the lathe very quickly, just so I can position the transmission to exactly the right height and angle that I want. And this bolts right up like that. And that's how the transmission is mounted. So this is the factory NC Miata propeller shaft or drive shaft. And what I found is that when this goes in, not only is the length perfect, and I mean perfect to the rear differential, but also a nice Easter egg I found is that this mounting feature is exactly the same as the FD RX-7, down to the centering ring, the mounting pattern, exactly the same. So this became a bolt-on part for me. I didn't have to do any modification to it, and it's just so beautiful. It's like, and with this engine tucked all the way to where the firewall, the new firewall is, the shifter location is exactly where the chassis hole is, and the propeller shaft being a perfect length. You know, to me, it just kind of feels like this swap is perfect for this car. And finally, we get to see what the drivetrain looks like inside the car. This is also my first time seeing it with the firewall in place. Now, how much do you think this car weighs right now? Now, keep in mind, obviously a lot of stuff is still missing. There's no windshield, no cooling system. The car is bone dry. There are no fluids, no oil, probably empty fuel tank. No interior. So that's 2,100 pounds. 46% front, 54% rear. And you can tell how light this car is right now because the car is sitting on lowering springs that I used to go racing with. And this car used to be slammed to the floor, like really, really low. And now it's sitting at like stock height. And here you can see how far back the engine is placed. It's almost entirely behind the front axle shock towers. And there's a massive amount of room in the front for cooling. It looks really good. Looks like it belongs there, in my opinion. I think it's beautiful. And you can see how much room there is between the engine and the factory steering rack. And again, once again, that's the first time I have this engine in with a firewall in place. You can see that there's plenty of clearance everywhere. And this is what I was talking about with regards to the pedals and the brake booster setup. So that's where the clutch cylinder goes up there. Brake booster. Everything looks actually really clean and tidy. And here's an interior view of the NC Miata factory pedals. And as you can see, they look nice and cozy in there. They look really good. I'm really happy with how they turn out. All right, so the engine swap is completed. So why am I making these videos? Well, I personally find the engine swap to be pretty straightforward. It's a process that I have done many times in the past. And besides, there's a bunch of videos and online resources out there for lots of different engine swaps. I think the second part of this build will be more interesting, which is the part where I transform a race car into a street car. You see, I got the shop to put in a very special cage for this car. And this is because at the time, I was sharing the car with a friend of mine. And both of us are taller than average. And this isn't a large car. It's actually really small, really crammed inside. And it was difficult for both of us to fit comfortably inside the vehicle with a helmet on, even with the bucket seat. So instead of fitting a regular cage, I asked the shop to drill out every spot weld and remove all the inner structure of the chassis, the unibody chassis, and push the roll cage as close to the body skin as possible. So this vehicle no longer has any structural integrity without the roll cage. In fact, if this cage was removed from the vehicle, the body would just simply collapse. So I've been thinking about this for years, and what I think I want to do, and let me know if it's good, is to use thin gauge steel sheet metal, cut them to shape, and basically fill all the spaces that's required, and basically hide the roll cage like this. Grind down all the welds so it's nice and smooth. So this essentially becomes hidden in the pillar, or I mean it is the pillar, but so this is kind of like a hidden roll cage idea. And I also plan on stuffing a lot of insulation inside, or some sort of a sound deadening foam. Same thing with the rear pillars. I'm gonna cut these shapes out and just tie the body entirely, or the skin, to the cage entirely, and just close all this up, all these ugly spaces, all this race car stuff I don't want to see anymore. Just close everything up. And after I close all the ugly race car holes, there's nothing I can do about these crossbars, obviously, which is fine. But after all the chassis holes have been closed up, I plan to paint it, or at least prime it, and then hire an upholstery shop, a special leather or interior shop, to basically apply a nice interior, nice padded interior to all the hidden, or the new pillars that I've created with the hidden roll cage inside. Okay, well, that's it for now. Cheers.